Tu podcast diario de inglés.
Okay, so you want to get better at English, right? We all do. There are a million ways to learn, but we're going to dive into one that's maybe overlooked, even though it's something you already do every single day.
I bet you're thinking, what could that be?
Exactly. It's listening. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into mastering English just by using your ears.
What's cool about listening is that it's like the OG way humans learn language.
OG?
Yeah, like the original, most basic way. Think about babies. No textbooks for them.
They just hear sounds all day long.
And they soak it up like little sponges.
Right. They don't even realize they're learning.
Exactly. And that's the key. By tapping into that natural immersion, you can get so much better at English. Not just understanding it, but speaking it too.
So where do we even begin?
First, forget the idea that learning has to be boring. Choose stuff you actually enjoy.
This is huge. So many people think, English learning, time for textbooks. But if you love, say, cooking shows.
Watch cooking shows in English. You're learning, but it feels like fun.
Right. My brain's not going to resist if it thinks we're just chilling.
And that's when the real magic happens. Engaged brain. That's when it starts picking up on all the subtle stuff, how words are pronounced, the rhythm, the tone.
It's like absorbing the music of English, not just the words.
You got it. And guess what? You don't need hours and hours. Short bursts, frequently.
Right.
That's way more effective.
This is so good to hear. Because who actually has hours to spare? But 15 minutes while I commute or while I'm cooking dinner?
That's all it takes. Those little English workouts throughout your day, they add up.
Love that. Making it part of life, not some chore.
Speaking of which, we got to talk about passive versus active listening. Passive is, well, English is on, maybe in the background.
It's like getting your ears used to the sounds.
Exactly. But to really level up, you need active listening.
Does this mean like sitting super still, focusing on every word?
Yeah, not that intense. It's more about really engaging with what you're hearing. Notice the speaker's tone, pick out key phrases, maybe summarize in your head.
So having a mental conversation with the speaker, not just letting the sounds wash over you.
Bingo. And here's a pro tip. Use transcripts or subtitles.
I was going to say, when I watch movies with subtitles, it's like things click into place way better.
You're literally seeing and hearing the language at the same time. Connections are being made in your brain.
It's giving my brain double the input so it remembers better.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing about choosing what to listen to. Difficulty matters.
Okay, so not too easy or we'll be bored.
Right. But not so hard we feel lost either. Aim for. Maybe you understand 70% to 80%.
That sweet spot where it's challenging, but I'm still learning. And hey, it's okay to start simple.
Absolutely. Build your way up. And here's a tip that might surprise you. Listen to the same thing multiple times.
Wait, seriously, won't that be like super boring?
Trust me, each time you'll pick up on stuff you missed before. It's like your favorite song, you always hear something new.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
First time, I'm just trying to get the main idea.
Yeah.
Second time, I can focus on the details.
Exactly. Each repetition, it's like you're strengthening those pathways in your brain.
Cool. It's like
Yeah.
really savoring the English, getting all the juice out of it.
And to really take things to the next level, there's this technique called shadowing.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Like becoming the speaker's echo.
Exactly. You listen to a bit, then repeat it out loud, trying to match their pronunciation and everything.
Sounds fun, but kind of intimidating too.
Practice makes perfect. It helps you sound more natural, plus it trains your ear to hear those tiny sound differences.
Giving my mouth and ears a workout at the same time.
Exactly. Now remember that vocabulary log we mentioned? That's your personal word bank.
You mean writing down new words as I come across them?
Yep. Writing it down helps you remember. And when you review your log,
It's like these aren't just random words, they're MY words, the ones that matter to me.
you become your own vocabulary curator. Okay, now a lot of people struggle with accents.
Oh, tell me about it. Some accents I'm just lost.
But the more you hear different accents, the better your ear gets at understanding them.
Like my ear needs to get used to all the different flavors of English out there.
Exactly. Even native speakers have accents. It's about embracing that diversity.
This is awesome. I'm seeing listening in a whole new light. But just to be clear, listening is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Of course. It's super powerful, but it works best with other skills. Reading, writing, speaking.
So textbooks and grammar still have their place.
Absolutely. It's about balance. Reading builds your knowledge, writing helps you practice, and speaking.
Well, that's where it all comes together in real life.
And listening helps it all sound more natural, more like how actual people talk.
Precisely. Think of it this way. You can read about how to bake a cake, but watching someone do it.
Makes it all come alive.
Right. And don't forget, find ways to have FUN with English. Don't make it a chore.
Maybe I join an English book club or start journaling in English. The possibilities are endless.
It's about making English part of your world, not just something you study. And hey, be patient. Fluency takes time.
It's like you don't run a marathon on your first try. Exactly. You got to enjoy the process, celebrate those little wins.
Oh, I remember when I first started, I was listening to a podcast, and suddenly it was like, I understood almost everything.
That's the feeling. Those moments keep you going.
Did you realize all that effort was paying off?
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, but how can you make English a bigger part of your daily life? Think beyond studying.
Good question. Maybe I switch my phone settings to English. Or follow some English-speaking creators online.
See, it's about creating that immersion, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
The more English I surround myself with, the more my brain will just get it.
You got it. Not just understand it, but start to think in English more naturally. Now, another question. Does where you listen matter? Like quiet room versus noisy cafe?
I've always wondered that.
It does. Switching it up trains your brain to handle distractions.
So if I can understand a podcast on a noisy bus, I'm like a listening ninja.
Oh, maybe not a ninja, but you're definitely on the right track. And don't forget about playback speed.
Oh yeah, you can speed up or slow down the audio.
Exactly. Tailor it to your level. Challenging. Slow it down. Getting good. Speed it up.
It's like having a personal English coach adjusting the pace just for me.
Exactly. Take control of your learning. Now, before we move on, one more thing. Community.
Oh, this is so important. Connecting with other people learning English.
It can be a game changer. You're not alone. You've got people to cheer you on, to share resources with.
I remember when I found an online forum for English learners, it was like I finally found my people.
That's the magic. And it's not just about feeling good. It's about learning from each other.
Someone might recommend an awesome podcast or give me a tip I never thought of.
Exactly. And there are so many ways to connect now. Online, in person, you name it.
So whether you're super social or prefer to connect online, find your tribe.
Don't be shy. Share your experiences. Everyone starts somewhere, right?
It's a learning journey we're all on together. And you know what the most important ingredient in this whole thing is?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Joy. It shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be fun.
Exactly. Tap into that curiosity. Embrace those aha moments.
Love it. Enjoy the ride, not just the destination. Okay, before we go to part 2, one last thought for our listener.
Me with it.
How can you add more JY to your English learning this week? Maybe a funny podcast, a lighthearted movie?
Or even just reading a fun article in English.
Find those little sparks of joy that keep you going. We'll be back with part 2, where we'll explore even more strategies for mastering English through listening.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive on mastering English through listening. Last time we talked about active listening, really engaging with what you're hearing, repeating stuff to make it stick, and even using subtitles to help those words sink in.
We also touched on how important it is to listen to a variety of accents. I mean, English is spoken all over the world.
You got it. The more you expose your ears to different ways of speaking, the easier it becomes to understand everyone. Now, I want to switch gears a bit and talk about something that might surprise you, changing up your listening environment.
Okay, this sounds interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it this way. When you vary where you listen, you're basically training your brain to adapt and deal with distractions better.
So like listening on a crowded bus or in a busy cafe, that actually helps me get better.
You got it. If you can focus on a podcast while all that's going on around you, imagine how much easier it will be to follow a conversation in a quieter setting.
It's like my brain is getting a workout, becoming a listening pro in any environment.
Right. And here's a bonus tip. Try listening in places that match real-world situations. Like, if you're planning a trip to, say, London, listen to travel podcasts or watch videos about London while you pack.
Ooh, I like that. It's like getting my ears ready for the trip before I even go.
Exactly. Or if you have a job interview in English coming up, listen to interview tips while you're getting ready in the morning.
Smart. It's like mental prep, but with my ears. Speaking of challenging myself, what about that thing we touched on before about playback speed?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Remember, you can usually adjust the speed in most podcast apps, so if it's too hard, slow it down a little.
And as I get better, I can bump up the speed.
You got it. That way you can really train your ears to understand fast talkers.
Cool. It's like having a personal English coach who can adjust the pace just for me.
Now, before we wrap things up, I really want to emphasize the importance of community in language learning. We touched on this before, but it's worth diving deeper.
Oh yeah, connecting with other people who are also learning English, it can be a game changer.
It really is. You realize you're not alone in this journey. Plus, you have people to cheer you on and to share resources with.
I remember when I was first starting out and I found this online forum for English learners. It's like, I finally found my people.
Exactly. And it's not just about support either. It's about learning from each other. Someone might recommend a cool podcast or have a tip for tackling grammar that you've never heard before.
I love that. It's like having a built-in support system and a brainstorming buddy all rolled into one.
Right. And these days, finding your tribe is easier than ever. There are tons of online forums, Facebook groups, even in-person meetups if that's your thing.
Yeah, there's something out there for everyone, whether you're super social or prefer to connect online. And it's important to remember, everyone starts somewhere. Don't be shy to reach out, even if you're just a beginner.
Exactly. We're all in this together. You know, this actually brings us to what I think is the most important ingredient in any successful language learning journey. Joy.
I knew you were going to say that.
Hey.
It's something I'm so passionate about. Learning English shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be fun.
You're right. It's about tapping into that curiosity, embracing the moments when something clicks, and just enjoying the process of learning something new.
I love that. It's like, don't just focus on the destination, enjoy the journey too.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to challenge our listeners.
Ooh, a challenge.
Yeah.
I like it. Tell me more.
Think about how you can make your English learning more joyful this week. Maybe listen to a comedy podcast that makes you laugh out loud, or watch a fun movie with English subtitles.
I'm up for the challenge.
Excellent. We'll be back with part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our exploration of mastering English through listening.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive on mastering English through listening. I feel like we've covered so much already.
We have. From how listening can actually rewire your brain to finding ways to make learning fun and connecting with other English enthusiasts.
Absolutely. But before we wrap things up completely, I think it's important to address something that holds a lot of people back. The fear of making mistakes.
Oh yeah, that fear of messing up, sounding silly, or just not being perfect. I get it. It can be a real roadblock.
Totally. I think so many people get caught up in wanting to speak perfectly right away, which kind of sucks all the joy out of learning. But you're saying that mistakes are actually okay.
Okay, they're essential. Think about it this way. When you were learning to walk as a kid, did you just give up after the first stumble?
Nope. Falling down was just part of the process.
Exactly. And language learning is the same. Every time you make a mistake, it's a chance to learn something, adjust, and try again.
So it's not about being perfect from day one. It's about embracing the messiness, the stumbles, and knowing that they're all part of getting better.
You got it. And guess what? Even native English speakers make mistakes all the time. We stumble over words, say things wrong. It's part of being human.
That's kind of a relief to hear. It takes the pressure off a bit, knowing that even those who've grown up speaking English still slip up sometimes.
It's all about changing your perspective. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, think of them as stepping stones on your path to fluency.
Love that.
Yeah.
So like giving myself permission to experiment, to play with the language, and to know that those little mess-ups are actually helping me learn.
Now, this ties into another important point. Be patient. Learning a language, it takes time. Some days you'll feel like you're making tons of progress, other days not so much.
We talked about that earlier. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. Just like training for a marathon, pace yourself. Celebrate the small wins. And most importantly, trust the process.
It's about that balance, right? Pushing myself, but also being kind to myself, knowing that learning isn't always a straight line.
And sometimes it's helpful to remind yourself why you started learning English in the first place. What are you hoping to achieve? What are your big goals?
Oh, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture. But remembering that initial spark, that motivation, can really keep you going.
Definitely. Maybe you dream of traveling and connecting with people from all over the world. Maybe you want to boost your career or learn new things. Or maybe you just love challenging yourself and opening up new possibilities.
It's like remembering that language learning is a gift you're giving yourself, a way to connect with the world in a whole new way.
Exactly. And as you continue on this journey, remember that there are tons of resources out there to support you. Podcasts, audiobooks, language partners, online communities, but also don't forget libraries, museums, cultural centers, even travel itself.
It's like there's a whole world out there just waiting to be explored, all while learning English.
That's the spirit. Be curious, be bold, and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way. Embrace the joy of discovery, connect with other learners, and trust in yourself. You've got this.
This has been such an awesome deep dive into mastering English through listening. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools and a fresh perspective on learning.
Me too. And I hope our listeners feel the same. Remember, you have what it takes to succeed. Enjoy the journey, trust the process, and never stop exploring the power of listening.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, keep those ears open, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with English.